This
or
conference will
amendments?
now be recorded.
Do I have to redo that? Okay. I will call the meeting to order officially. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No.
Okay, if there is a motion. I'll make the motion.
I'll make the motion. This is Tina. Approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second it. Is there, on to the regular meeting minutes from last month? Any additions or corrections?
Hope not.
Well, there is one. I didn't have Brian Haugen listed as present for the meeting, so I fixed that. But it's not reflected on there. I fixed it on mine.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended.
I can second that.
All in favor? Do I have to roll call?
Aye.
I think so.
They're
Aye.
all giving me thumbs up. I abstain. Okay, next. The monthly financial report.
Yeah, so some notable things on this month. The first one, we see the finance seminar showing up, and it's 8280 because that's the EDA's portion of the number of members that signed up, because also the planning commission, the park board, that total sum was divided by each three of those boards and commissions. So that's one noticeable. The other ones are pretty normal. And then some other unique ones, we'll see the compensation from last year pop up, but I need Rich to sign those. So nobody's getting paid today, long story short, unless yeah, I would assume so. The vice president acts instead of the president when the president's not available, so you can sign them if you want.
Sign the check. She can't sign the check.
can't sign the check.
No.
No.
Okay.
Unless she has the signing thing at the bank.
Yeah, I don't know if I, as treasurer, if I'm on the bank account or not.
I'm not sure. We can
I'm
just,
on the bank, not the EDA one, but I'm on the city council one, but
On the fair board, does that help? Brian's at the bank, does that help? And the treasurer, maybe.
yeah.
Swing
Well,
by.
we can just wait till Rich gets back next month, if you guys don't mind getting postponed payment. But other than that,
Are you talking about our EDA checks?
yeah, they're all right here.
we already got those.
I was like, we already got them.
Oh, well, you need you to sign the voucher, or Rich to sign the vouchers.
Oh.
They're already paid, so the voucher.
I gotcha.
The vouchers.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Oh, I thought we were.
But other than that, it's pretty normal as far as monthly financials.
If there are no other questions, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thumbs up. Perfect. Opposed? Motion passed. Public hearings, none. Old business, membership discussion.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have 3 applications for our 2 vacancies. And hopefully, did you guys receive those emails, Tina and Brian? So I don't, maybe we all just take a moment to read over them. Dave Dolan attached his resume as well, and it's pretty lengthy, so I don't know if you want to check it out, but maybe take a moment to read them over and then let's start discussion.
Hey, Sarah, is yours getting a bunch of feedback or is that you? It's you. So Dylan and Lindsay, can you remind me, do we have one open position or two?
2.
So I'm assuming these other 2 came to us via an ad in the paper or something, word of mouth.
I reached out to DFA directly, and then their general manager, Terry Johnson, who we've met with a few times, Brian knows well too.
Okay.
He ended up applying.
Okay.
Connie actually stopped in one day because she moved back to the community. She moved here just maybe, do you remember, a couple months ago?
Yeah, she knows Kim really well, so she,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I think she stopped in to speak with Kim specifically, and then she had brought up to Kim and I how she was looking for different opportunities to volunteer in Zumbrota. And so then we introduced her to Dylan, because we're like, huh, funny you should say that.
Yep, so she was a walk-in. The other 2 were reached out to. One was recommended to me, and then one was reached out to directly.
And I think, so for awareness, I reached out to Dave Dolan, knowing that he served previously on our city council, and then moved away for a year or so as they were looking to build a house back here, but really been a member of this community for quite some time. I think he could bring some really unique perspectives to this position in the EDA with his skill set. So I would be very comfortable with Dave. I know, Dylan, that you were looking to have somebody either from DFA or from Three Rivers, one of those organizations. So I'm good with that one either as well. I just honestly don't know Connie, and there isn't a ton of information in her application for me to make a decision on that one at this point. So I would feel comfortable moving Dave and Terry forward.
Do we know if Terry is in Zumbrota long-term, or is this just a short-term stay?
I'd be unfamiliar.
I don't know,
Yeah.
he's been here for 2 years.
Yeah, I think this is a long-term thing for him. He's at the coffee shop all the time, the coffee mill. He's out and about talking to people, and yeah, we meet with him a couple of times a month, and yeah, he's just a good guy. And big business in town, the biggest business in town. He just is interested in contributing.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that he was a former Rotary Club member, so maybe something that can move kind of our chamber direction forward. At least have some experience with that and how that worked. But, open to anybody else's ideas, conversations as well.
Did Rich see these?
No.
Okay.
And,
Just
well,
didn't know
yeah,
if he had any input either.
I can email it to him too.
I thought we weren't going to make this decision until March when he got back. Or did
No, we weren't going to make the officer decision until March.
Oh, okay.
Remember, he wanted Lindsay to be president.
Oh, right.
We said, hey, she might want to be here.
Yeah, all 3 of these applications came in post last month's meeting too. So there was, there was preliminary discussions about, Three Rivers and reaching out to DFA and Dave Dolan's interest. But as far as the applications, when they came in, they were just all in the past couple of weeks. So this is the first time, these are being presented. Which I can give a little backstory too. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I really wanted someone from Three Rivers because they are a community development or action program. They're identified as a CAP. They have economic and community development departments within them, ranging from everything from childcare to workforce development. And I thought that would be a really nice fit. I reached out to them and spoke with their community development director and their executive director multiple times, and it just seems not too many people live within town or have the interest at this time. They've discussed it at a number of staff meetings. In this kind of the same token, reaching out to DFA, as Brian said, being our biggest business in town, I think that would be bridging a connection between the city and a large player in the area. And I see a lot more pros to that than most other places just because of their capacity and the capabilities of things that they can do. And getting them involved with more city aspects might be fruitful in the future type of thing. So those are just kind of my thoughts.
And do we know if Connie, if there is any openings on planning and zoning or on the park board that may be of interest to her? I just didn't know. It mentioned something about selling, so I was thinking maybe she was a realtor or something, but not real sure.
There's no opening.
Terms coming up.
Thanks the leg time. It's park board.
No, there isn't any openings on the park board, but I guess the festival kind of came to mind.
Or the potential for needing pool committee people for fundraising.
Yes, we're gonna need a lot of those people. So yeah, I think there's gonna be other upcoming opportunities for her if she'd be interested in those that we could let her know about too. Because I don't think, she just was looking for opportunities in general, so I don't think.
Yeah, she moved back to the community and she's from here. She went to high school with Kim now that I recall.
She's a classmate of Kim.
And she just, was enthusiastic about getting involved. So I feel like there's a place for her, and I know there are some spots, and we can get into that a little later in the agenda too.
So what are you looking for, Dylan or Lindsay? A motion to move these forward, a hold on it? What do you want to do?
Ideally, we could recommend to council our 2 nominations, and potentially have them show up next month.
I think so.
Good with that?
We have a quorum, so technically we can
Yeah.
make a motion and approve it, so. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to send 2 members to the city council for approval. Dave Dolan and Terry Johnson.
Is there a second?
I'll
I will
second that.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
I finally got my audio to work.
Oh, sure. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. On to new business, the Cover Bridge Festival.
Yeah, so this one is just surrounding the festival and the responsibilities towards it. So just give some backstory. The city staff, we met every month or talked about the festival every month. And one of the things we'd like the EDA to consider is contributing monetarily to the Covered Bridge Festival and support the initiative of hiring an event planner for it. And Tina and I have had the conversation just a couple months back about the capabilities of something like an event planner for the city and events as a whole, not just the festival. As far as contributions to a second type of event and or contributions to other community events. And then some of the reasoning I listed in the memo, and it's just over the years, the festival committee has gotten smaller and smaller, and responsibilities, participation, let's say, has decreased, and it's made more city staff time to uphold the festival each year. I can only speak personally, and if Miranda, you want to chime in, you can too, but a couple hundred hours last year in the heart of the building season just to put on a festival that people wouldn't show up for to help on the committee. It's become a unsustainable venture, in my opinion. And it's, thinking about the outlook too, the long-term goal of our EDA is to support economic development organizations. One day when we get a visitor center, one day when the Chamber of Commerce, like we mentioned earlier, the Chamber has the capabilities of doing visitors centered capabilities, business retention, resident retention, events, things of that nature. But until that, we're kind of spread thin. So I think one of the ways around it, and I've thought about this for some time, is potentially to have a conversation surrounding hiring an event planner, which being proactive, I looked into that too, and it seems to be a hard, there's not too many companies out there that, if you simply Google event planning, you get a lot of weddings, there's a million of those, but there's gig websites is what they're called, because it's not a full-time job. Obviously the most popular one would be something like Craigslist, but there's another ones I found like freelancer.com and Upwork, just to test the waters with that. The other idea I thought of is, it should mean something that the festival is put on by the community for the community. So reaching out to the festival committee, if any members wanted to step up with more participation. There's been talks over the months with bringing the idea to Ziba, which they've had mixed reviews about, but if hiring in an event planning, capacity, maybe that can spur some involvement. So it's an idea that's kind of morphed into research, and research came to a proposal type of thing.
I guess my one question is, does the festival fundraising go above and beyond to cover something like this? Or how much do you think something like this would cost? And can we budget for it this year, find somewhere for it, or do you have to wait until next year now?
Yeah, so the festival, speaking just of last year, it made more than it spent by a couple grand. So that kind of formed what a proposal would be. And I kind of just wrote it down. And like I said, I couldn't find an organization per se, but I kind of like the thought of sending it out locally first, because maybe somebody would step up for X amount of money. I did find in research that usually event planners don't take a per hour rate. They take a percentage of a total cost of something. And that goes with weddings too, but also festivals. So, and that's usually around 10%. So if you think $10,000, $15,000 festival, which last year was just north of 15. So I thought $2,000 allocation of either our promotional and expenses fund, because it obviously fits in there. And this year it's not getting used much with no visitors guides. And going forward, the visitors guide shouldn't be 5,000 if it decreases and goes digital. Otherwise, like you said, that festival budget, I mean, last year we raised about $20,000, and most years, not all of it goes. And I don't know if it's
I think it also kind of depends how you structure it financially. I found that the way that Dylan had us do it last year was a lot more helpful than how we had been doing it. Because how we had been doing it in the past was we would send letters out to businesses and just ask for sponsorships, and we had different levels. Versus last year, Dylan said, well, why don't we reach out to businesses and ask, if there's events that they would like to see and sponsor. So I found that helpful, because I mean, businesses were probably the most generous that they've been, in the last couple of years. They were so generous last year, the way that they were approached, versus, I don't know if they just kind of felt like with the other structure, like it was capped. I don't know. People were very generous last year. So it could have just been coincidence too, but.
I always think of it as one of those things, if you're going up to a business asking for money, nobody really knows what to give. So if you give them an idea type of thing, that kind of puts it in their mind. Like, for example, our fireworks is the biggest expense, and the phone company picks that up just because they know what the expense is, they know their names on it, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, the other thing is too, one of my worries is, seeing historically the festivals, does anybody know the first year of the festival? How long has it been going on? I tried calling the historical society, but they're not always open.
Yeah, in some kind of capacity, a long time.
So,
And I don't think it's a new issue, Dylan. I mean, I think when Sarah was probably on the festival committee 20 years ago, it was the same issue. It's always a struggle to get volunteers. And I really think if we want to create an event or multiple events, that there needs to be some dedicated resources to doing that. I mean, I think we're all busy, people are running businesses, running kids, running everything. And while we would still want to volunteer, I think, for someone, just somebody to dedicate their role to leading this initiative would just really, hopefully, turn out a great event with not maybe as much dedicated city staff effort to this.
Yeah, what I've been told is, it kind of always fell on the community development side of things, and then that
Yep.
wasn't always handled well there, so it fell back on Kim and Miranda or whoever was, and who was there before Miranda, Cindy. We really can't afford to do that anymore. We're moving and shaking now. We're trying to get things in place, and we don't have enough time for community development the way it is, much less peeling out a couple of hundred hours to coordinate this. So I would like to see, something different happen as well. I think it's important that we have a festival, so I'm not on board with the option of it's just not going to happen. If we have to suck it up for one more year, I'd like to make a festival happen, but we need to put every effort into getting somebody, an event planner, or, we're gonna have to spend some dollars on that, but that's gonna save a whole lot of staff time. It'll pay off some dividends, down the line. So that's, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and you notice like other communities, different festivities that they put on throughout the year aren't necessarily all coming from the city or their Rotary or their, what is that other thing that you want to create, chamber. But there's some other organizations that are helping create community events as well. Fire departments, other groups, organizations that are, I'm just thinking, I just saw the Mazeppa Winterfest and I was like, well, that's a cool thing. Who's putting that together? And it was literally their fire department and the Lions Club. So, I'd like to see this branch out to maybe there's somebody that gets a stipend or can coordinate some of these, but doesn't necessarily have to be city staff, taking away from really the economic development work that we need to be doing as well. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
I would agree with that. And then to your point of branching out, the other thing that this does is helps one of the future dominoes to fall, because like we were talking about, a chamber, a portion of it is usually putting on events, because events directly positively impact the businesses when you have an influx of people in town. That's usually why you see chambers putting on events, or Lions clubs, or any type of program that wants exposure or is trying to sell a product or service type of thing. So it's one of those things that, like a chamber, and speaking with Zeba, in order for a chamber to happen, they need a fundraise. So everything always comes down to money, and that kind of geared me toward this path that maybe we need to incentivize the people of Zumbrota in order for them to step up to serve each other and have community events, which, to Brian's point, I see this as a way better positive than not letting it happen as well.
Is it gonna be on the third weekend in June again, or do we not know?
So after last festival, we sent out some polls and surveys, and we got a few hundred responses back from a majority of the vendors and a few hundred attendees. And in a landslide, people voted for the third weekend in September and a one-day only event. So that's what I anticipate it should be.
Oh.
Plus that gives more time for things like this, for planning and stuff. And then the responses, I can send that to you guys sometime. The survey, I don't know if it was SurveyMonkey or Google Surveys or what it was, but people liked the weather. People liked it not being what's in June, Father's Day. People liked kids being back in school, so there's more people in the community instead of being away for the summer. There was just a number of reasons, but it kind of won in a landslide, which we weren't sure. That's why we sent out the polls and surveys, just to see in the first place.
We've also talked about, another event in the winter, a Winterfest type thing, kind of like Mazeppa did, Christmas tree out here, bonfire, skating, whatever it might be. If we could find someone that would handle, a couple of events, the coordination of them, we could pay somebody to do that each year. And then, gather volunteers around that coordinator, that is not a city staff person. City staff, we would probably help, I'm sure, but we just don't have the time to dedicate to all the coordination.
So is this a twofold motion? Like, yes, we want to hire somebody, yes or no? And then two, are we going to compensate them? If so, how much type of a?
It can be. Like I said, I tried doing as much research as I could to see how much event planners would even. So in my mind, I guess what I would ask for is a $2,000 allocation towards event planning. And if one isn't found, we could obviously modify it, but because the other thing is, if event planner comes in and they're a rock star, or it's an organization that does this type of thing, and we have a, $25,000 budget for whatever reason, they might want more even. So and if it's less, it could be less, but that's
Well,
kind
that
of
was my
what
question. Do they do like a base rate and then a percentage of profits or something? Like I'm envisioning that's probably how, so if they're bringing in more vendors, more people, more whatever, they increase the revenue. Do they take a cut of the revenue above their base allocation or stipend?
How about this? How about we make a motion that you can look into this and see what it costs and figure out if we can get someone on board this year or not, and see how much it costs, and then we can make a decision then.
that's kind of what I wanted, but it's been not as fruitful as I had hoped. Like I said, there's not really a company that does, especially an arts and crafts or a community festival, because to the kind of the conversation we had earlier, it's usually put on by a commercial club or business association or chamber of commerce. So then finding out the percentages of what usually event planners are paid, that's kind of where I came up with the 2,000 number. Because what I would like to do is advertise, in the paper and city social media, showcase to Zebas and the festival committee and Lions Club that, hey, $2,000 is available if we accept you, or, I can make an application and things like that too. Because I spent probably a couple hours over the course of a couple of weeks every time trying to research event planning. There's people that do music. There's people like festivals, which unless, we can have a big concert instead of an arts and crafts fair, but those are expensive.
We've already done that. They get rained out.
Right.
And they've done that. Right, Sarah? Remember those? They were huge concerts.
Yeah, they were fun, but we only did it 1 year,
And
and it
I'll say
rained,
this,
so we never did it.
Lost too much money.
I have 2 leads on event planners too, just people who have done events for places like the VFW, so smaller, but they do not respond and do not have proper business writing and emails and things I probably wouldn't approve of anyway.
Maybe we can create a board. Rochester Fest, it's a Rochester Fest board that maybe we can't get people to volunteer for that either, but I don't know. At least then, and then they've got their own budget then. It is, but we can
Ideally.
formalize it and make
The
it
committee is a
appointed
little
and
more
everything.
fluid.
Hey, isn't there one of those wedding shows coming up, Dylan? Can't you go to those? Don't you need to go to one of those anyways? Just kidding. They would have event planners, I would think, but I'm like, the only one I know, she just does, not just, but she puts on a huge series of horse shows. And so, similar, because it's a huge event and they're at 4 different arenas across 3 different states, but.
Yeah, there's some wedding planning websites that are usually, a single individual who does it as their job. And then they say that they do events, and I go on or I email them, and it's usually like kids' birthday parties and things like that for an event. Or they
Sure.
do
Well, my
corporate
thought was
events
more
too.
from a how do they charge? Like that's more of
Sure.
from that perspective than the next. I think that we'd advertise locally and just put up our
Yeah.
requirements of what we're looking for, but more, my curiosity is more of around the stipend or the pay that, and for that, what does that include?
So would you say
Like a job description?
in this, in the job description for the event planner?
Yeah, do we have one?
No, the job description, I mean, I can break it down line by line, and I have a list of all the duties that I did for the festival, but it's essentially running a festival, procuring arts and crafts vendors and taking those applications, doing the correspondence, event planning from everything from the site prep to, mapping out where things are, getting the food vendors, beverage vendors, music, activities, kids, activities.
And how much
Great.
involvement is the committee? Because I would imagine that this event planner would be, coordinating everything, not necessarily like you doing everything. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
again, it's going to take more than one person to put this on,
Well,
even if you pay them, because, a lot
yeah.
of work.
The event planner isn't replacing the committee.
No, they just do
Working
the
alongside.
brunt of the work because the committee is sort of an advisory and not a working board. Do you know what I mean? And it's becoming less and less in every capacity too. So
Why isn't it an advisory committee? It's an event. That doesn't make any sense to me that it would be an advisory committee.
Because essentially how it has been is everybody that shows up has ideas and then they kind of toss it back at city staff because we're being paid by the city anyway, so we may as well call the vendors, arrange the things because we're being
Right,
paid
and I
for.
think that's the expectations that need to change. I mean, and that's what those, so like a committee would have, somebody's in charge of the vendors, somebody's in charge of the music, somebody's in charge of the place, somebody's in charge of the kids, so they all have a role, and that's not your roles.
Right, I think having city staff play such a large role has been, I'll say, confusing for members of the committee.
Well, and I think, Kim played somewhat of a dual role. I think she stepped in there when we were kind of in the midst of some transitions. And I think she volunteered volunteered to be on the committee, and then it kind of became all consuming that it kind of blurred the lines between her work and her volunteer time. And so totally understandable. But I think it's an opportunity to create what we want, not what was. So what are some other event committees that work? Fair boards, they work. They all have different roles and jobs, and golf boards, they're not necessarily advisory. So I think it's just more of a maybe restructuring or creating what you want it to be, and then there's roles to those, and the coordinator is getting paid, and the rest are volunteers that work with that coordinator.
I agree with that. And I think one of the things, to Miranda's point too, is as people like giving ideas, and then once you ask for someone to do this or someone to do that aspect of it, they stop showing up.
I do that all day long. And to my staff, I'm like, okay, so we need to do this. And when I say we, I mean you.
Yeah.
I have to clarify that, because I was like, it's not me. When I say we, it's not me.
But, and then to compound on that too, as just speaking from last year, for example, as the months went on, the timeline got shorter and the responsibilities were still there. And so it just resorts to the city because people call the city. I mean, there's a Facebook page for the festival, and that's, Sarah has that.
Does all the marketing and stuff for
But
it.
it's one of those things when people are calling the city about, I want to be a vendor, or when's the festival, or how can I sign up, or I need this form or that form. It becomes a job for the city because someone didn't want to volunteer or step up to take that portion. I mean, because every festival meeting, I have an agenda, And I'd say what's needed, responsibilities, I'd ask who could take it, and it would always, I mean, every month, we'd have multiple meetings. Every month it was someone's busy, or we'd only have 3 or 4 people there. I mean, we had
Or somebody would say they're going to do something and then the next meeting would come around and, oh, well, I thought you were going to do that.
or they didn't show up again. That happened too. But I mean, we had multiple meetings where it was just Kim, I, and Miranda too. So it's the alternative to not doing anything is, to what Brian was saying, is to not let it happen at all. And so after a year of reference and experience, and the way I'll say it is, in order to instill pride in these people to want to work, it seems like people need to be paid because nobody wants to work for free. And, you know,
Well,
the
I don't know that that's necessarily true, because I think, we're all not making any money, not getting rich at this. Do you know what I mean? It's still, a lot of people have a innate desire to give back to the community that they live in. That's why most of us sit around here and do what we do. But I think that there's just an opportunity to maybe look at it a little differently. And maybe it's, we bring in the fire department and say, hey, is there a whole thing with, now you have your pickleball court and all that stuff? Is there an opportunity that you, fire board or fire department, can run something, so maybe it's, they have different officers on their, I think they have a community outreach person on their fire department structure. But I mean, I think it's that. It's like, if we want to continue to have a festival, we're just going to have to maybe look at it a little differently and pull in bigger groups to maybe help.
Okay, so is there a motion that can be made speaking along some of those lines, at least a motion to have a position, maybe not so much like Sarah said, maybe we can go back and look a little bit better on how they were gonna pay them, but at least we can move forward with the position. We can reach out to these different groups and find out if there's somebody interested. Or Dylan can start creating an application. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think it's a good idea. I think we can work with it.
Did anybody catch what Sarah said?
Did not. Can you say that again, Sarah?
You're cutting out. Did you not pay the internet bill at your new house? Nope, you're totally frozen.
Good luck finding someone, that's all.
Probably true story.
I can't.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's going to be an excess of candidates stepping up. So I don't know that you need to spend a lot of time on an application, but more time probably just getting that information out there and seeking somebody.
Yeah,
But I would
say it's
make a
more of a job description. What does this role entail? And then kind of some positions of the rest of the board. I mean, I think we just need that structure, but go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just going to make a motion that we allow Dylan to seek out potential candidates. Hopefully that's multiple that would be willing to be some sort of Covered Bridge Festival coordinator, and possibly on a paid basis.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed? Motion passed.
Can
So
I
that
ask
a
really quick?
position. Yes, go
Dylan,
ahead.
does that give you enough direction? Or are you looking for like a dollar amount? Because I'm not sure that I know
no,
what that is. Okay.
I can say what Brian said, it may be compensated, or I could say compensation may be available with an appropriate, applicant
Perfect.
or applicants, say things like that.
Well, and I would suggest we get the committee together,
Yep.
and that has been part of this, whether or not they've been a big part of it or not, and just to discuss this and say, okay, we're looking at possibly compensating some to be a director and handle this. And I would say that, we could even be willing to find a corner in the office here and put a phone on the desk if they need a spot for home base, if that would help as well. Or maybe we get a cell phone for the coordinator. So there's one contact number, so all the calls are not coming in here. They're going to that, something like that. We could make it
Or a phone
enticing
number. Mhm.
as easy as possible for the coordinator.
Well, and I have a question. So are we looking for somebody that like just does this for their job? Like, do they have to have experience? Because I'm kind of thinking there could be one or two people on our current committee that maybe would do this for compensation.
And I think that's the
Yeah.
best person possible.
I think so too.
They're
As long
familiar with it.
as they understand what the roles are.
Responsibilities are. Mhm.
They're pretty much the point person.
Yeah.
So when all these ideas come in, they are going to handle or delegate or
Yeah.
do
Okay.
something with it.
Yeah.
Good.
Is right that they all didn't understand, how it should be structured. That is, we really don't want it to be a city thing, driven by the city. We want it to be driven by, an organization. So
We lost a lot of our group too when COVID happened and then we took a year off from the festival. So the committee took a big hit in participation because of that.
maybe Connie Boyd is interested.
Oh, I think she'd be great.
She has thought about the festival. She came in my office and we talked for a bit before I gave her the application for the EDA, and she probably talked half the time about the festival and how she has ideas for it. So she was, if I was voting on the members, I'd vote on what we voted on and then talk to her about festival committee.
Any other discussion, or we will move on to reports. I'll start with the Cracker Jack market study.
Yeah, so Cracker Jack LLC is a marketing firm here in southern Minnesota, and they have market studies for a multitude of industries. But long story short, I just wanted to report that I've ordered a market study, particularly to find more data on restaurants. And I shared some of the information they've passed over already with city staff and just showing the city of Zembroda's market potential. So for example, one of the fun pages on this report is going to tell us how much more of a market capacity we have than Pine Island, for example, not to throw them under the bus or anything, but the fact that we're the same population and we have 50% difference in how much more market capacity we have. I'm also hoping that this individual can do a presentation. She had mentioned that she wouldn't be able to get it by next meeting, March. So hopefully by April we have a market study. But one of the reasons for this order too is that we have some potential developments that I think data would benefit. So that's just a fun one. I think that'll be good, interesting information. I'm gonna keep going.
Sure.
All right, the next two are a lot quicker. I know someone said they wanted to get out of here by 6:25. Just a reminder, next month, we're gonna do the elected officials for the year. And that's kind of one of the other reasons why, we get the 2 vacancies filled. They could show up next month and then they can volunteer even if they wanted for XYZ position. And then the last one is just a reminder again that next month will be probably our annual meeting. So I'll have the annual report from last year and the action plan done when Rich is back and we have a full staff.
Is there anything else? Otherwise, a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thanks for leading it, Lindsay. Good job.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Hope you're all feeling better.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.